If you are looking to change industries in your career, if you're thinking about it or thinking, how do I do it? I want to do it, but I don't think I can. This is the podcast for you to listen to. And I've talked to so many people this year, even a couple people just in the past month, who are switching industries and they are just going into it blindly, just like I did. And I honestly feel like you're doing it and that's the way to go. But I wish I had someone to help me along the way. And so I'm going to give you so many tips and tricks, and hopefully my story can encourage you. And I think this is really for anyone too, who is liking their job, not liking their industry, maybe even just a little bit older and feels like they can't switch industries. And that's not true. And so this podcast is to encourage you to do it. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. And hopefully you can pick up some tips and tricks along the way. So I wanted to title this podcast multiple things. And so here's a couple of titles that I was thinking about. This could be titled Why I Left My Dream Job, from Dream Job, Dream Life, Leaving SeaWorld and Starting in a Call Center, or from SeaWorld Dolphin Trainer to Call Center Help Desk. From Woke and Broke to Alive and Thriving. That's a good one. I just made that up off the top of my head. And from Zero to Hero, from tripling how to triple your income. So this one's for those career folk, maybe people that are stuck, people who need a little bit of encouragement. This one's for you.
Hey, you're listening to Become Alive with Katey, where I empower you to become alive and live your full potential.
I went from heartbroken, hopeless, depressed, suicidal to living life with a purpose, with hope, with happiness, and with freedom, with true freedom and freedom in Christ. This podcast is also always going to reference God. It's always going to reference the Bible, because a lot of my story, all of my story has to do with that. Wouldn't be here today without Jesus and what he did in my life, because I did not believe in Jesus, was not a churchgoer, was not a believer, not a conservative, was not any of these things that I am today when I was going through all this. So God orchestrated all of this. And actually, I have a cool story about someone that called me on the phone, actually. I forgot. I didn't write this in my notes, but it's just coming to me now, and I feel like I need to share it. So if you're listening, this is for you, because God is having me share it. Do you know the song, if you listen to the Caleb radio station, it's called Symphony. It's by Switch. Switch is the house band for Life Church Worship. Okay, so I was in the call center. We did customer service and sales, both. So we were account executives and customer service agents. And on one of my customer service calls, I picked up the phone and was having this in-depth conversation with this woman. And it was very common where I worked, because we worked for a health and wellness company that was founded on the idea of empowering people and personal development. So a lot of our calls were just very in-depth with our customers. And this particular woman was like, do you know, she was like, I don't know why God is telling me to tell you this, but do you know the song Symphony by Switch? It's on Caleb a lot right now. This was in 2020. And I was like, yeah, I love that song. I've been listening to it a lot. It's so funny. And she's like, well, I feel like God's telling me that that's your song for what you're going through in life. And I was like, whoa. And I'd never met this woman. The lyrics in this song Symphony are, because even in the madness, there is peace, drowning out the voices all around me. Through all of this chaos, you were writing a symphony. Through all of the chaos, you were writing a symphony. So with that being said, we're going to get started. Okay, so going back to, I went from being heartbroken, hopeless, depressed, suicidal, to now living my life with a purpose, on purpose, with hope, with happiness, true joy. Joy is found in Jesus alone. And freedom, true freedom. I also, in all of this, tripled my income, bought a brand new car, moved in on my own into the city with a bay view, a water view. I got my health back. I was getting really sick. Not getting sick. I was really sick. I got healthy again. I got new friends, healthy friends. I gained a growth mindset. I started to read all of these personal development books to better myself. I had never heard of the personal development world ever. I didn't know what personal development was. And I started my own business. I started Become Alive in 2020, and I actually made a profit on my first big event. So in all of this, we're going to learn how to switch industries, how to 180 your life, and we're going to learn a little bit about work ethic. Okay. So my story of switching industries and how I 180'd my life begins with my journey at SeaWorld San Diego. So I was a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld San Diego, and I have a whole nother story about that. But I want to start at the end of that story because we're talking about how to change industries, right? So I was the dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. And in the last couple of years there, I started to just really feel stuck. And it wasn't just me, it was kind of everyone I was around. And that has a lot to do with your environment. So if you're taking notes or if you're listening to this, just stop for a second and think about the environment that you're in, because that has everything to do with why you're feeling stuck. And you might need to shift into a new environment, meaning new group of friends, because it is a fact that you become the 5 people you are surrounded with most. Think about it. Think about your closest friends. You are similar to them. If you don't love their life, you probably need some new friends. Okay, so I was at SeaWorld and I was just feeling really stuck, and just started to show up with the I don't care about this attitude. I hope that one day my boss Brian listens to this, and I just want to say I'm sorry, Brian. I just showed up so terribly during like the last year that I was there, and you were such a good boss. And you guys, I was literally, it's one of those jobs you have to like clock in and swipe your card so it marks the time that you swipe in. And I would always show up. You can have seven minutes to show up early or late. That's like your 7-minute, 14-minute total window when you're supposed to clock in. And I was always at the 7-minute mark because I didn't care. And it was almost like me trying to show that I didn't care. And so I was always just having this, I don't care about this attitude. My coworkers and I would talk about how we all wanted new jobs, but we would just all spiral negatively down this rabbit hole of like, how would we ever take our dolphin training skills and put it on a resume to go get a new job? What can we do from being a dolphin trainer? How would we transition being a dolphin trainer to any other job in the world? And so we would just get in this negative mindset of like, nope, we can't do it. It's impossible for us. We'll just have to be dolphin trainers forever. And that sounds like kind of cool, but it's not. I promise you, it's a dream. It was a dream job. Absolutely loved it, but near impossible to support a life for yourself. It is hard. It is very hard. And people that do it, kudos to you, because it is hard. So I found myself at this just like, I don't care mindset for a hot minute. And I waited, and I wanted to change jobs, and I wanted to take it out, and I wanted to start something new. And we'd always talk about it in the locker room. Do you find yourself kind of talking about like, oh, I should change industries? I really want to change industries. For people that are just talking about how they don't like their job, they don't want a new job in the industry. They want a new job elsewhere. They want out. They want to start over from scratch. Totally get it. And this podcast is for you. Keep listening. If you can change from being a dolphin trainer to what I'm doing now, you can do anything. And so I found myself at that rock bottom for way too long. I think I was in that mindset for almost 3 years because I just didn't think that I could actually change. And honestly, all had to do with my own fear. So I challenge you, if this is speaking to you, take a look at yourself in the mirror right now. Ask yourself, do you really think that you can do this and can make the change, or do you do not believe in yourself? Because who's stopping you? Literally, ask yourself that question. Who and what is stopping you from actually making the change? The answer is nothing. Nothing is stopping you but your own fear, your own excuses, and your own victim mindset. And that's what I was living with. I was living with all of those things. And I didn't believe in myself at all. And I found myself at the end of, 2018. Yeah, it was 2018. And I just found myself at this rock bottom. I was starting to become like the voice of change on my team when things would go wrong, because I was still too scared to actually leave. So I would start trying to fix things, and I would actually speak up when it was scary to speak up, and go to the head ofs when no one else wanted to. And when everyone would have a problem with something in the team, in the organization, they would just start telling me, Katey, since you don't really care about your reputation here anymore, can you just go speak up about it? And I would just start speaking up. And I think that plays a lot into the person that I've become today, because I've learned that sometimes you just got to step in and speak up and speak out and get rid of fear, and actually make the change. But as I started to speak up and speak out and try to make change, I realized that change wasn't going to happen. And so I realized that if things aren't going to change here, I need to make a change in my life. This was at a time. So now I've hit this rock bottom. I'm showing up to work just in this I don't care mindset. I need out. I need to change. I was also going through so many things in my personal life. So I guess this is where I share that story. And I bet you that if you are someone that's looking to make a change in your career right now and trying to change industries, I bet you most likely have things going on in your personal life that are pushing you to make a change as well, right? And my personal life, it felt like every single thing around me, every single thing that I touched was falling and breaking and crumbling. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the meme where it's a cartoon meme, and the dog is sitting with his cup of coffee on the kitchen table, and there's a fire all around him, and he's just sitting there with his smile, sitting in the fire, and he's like, everything's fine. And my friends would send me that meme, and they were like, Katey, this is your life right now. And I'm like, oh, I know. Yeah. I was so much debt. So I was financially hurting. My car was breaking down, would barely work anymore. And I had a beater car, as a little stick shift, so old, and was breaking down, would barely make it to work. And most mornings towards the end of my career here, it wouldn't make it to work, and I'd have to bike to work, and which would make me even more late. And then I'd have to text my boss, once again, sorry, Brian. And I'd have to text my boss and be like, running late again. Got written up because I was late once. And that's unlike me. If you know my whole life story, I'm very motivated, like a good student, teacher's pet, a people pleaser. I want to do well because that has so much to do with who I am, my character, my work ethic. It's just a no-brainer to me. That's how I was raised. And so for me to be making these types of decisions and actions was so out of character for me. And so it was broken, financially broke. I had an abusive roommate, emotionally and verbally abusive, but there were some threats of physical abuse as well. So it was in an unsafe home. And I also had just been broken up with from a person that I thought I was going to marry. And because of all these things happening in my life, that person didn't like what was going on and didn't want to do life with a broke and depressed, messed up person, which was so sad and so frustrating to me, because I was like, this isn't me. This is just a weird season in my life. It left me while I was living on my friend's blow-up mattress. I also had a rental car because I was also my car broke down. I had to sell it in a dark alley for cash at night. And then I was carless. And then didn't have charge on my phone because I was basically homeless during this time, and had to walk to the yoga studio and ask if they could charge my phone so I could call an Uber to go home to my friend's couch. And I was also very sick, gaining a lot of weight, digestive issues, a lot of mental, neurological issues going on, just of me just kind of being frantic and not having it together. Some panic attacks, just all over the place. And I just didn't recognize myself in the mirror at all. That was wild. So it was just a wild time. So I was just at this rock bottom. I waited too long to change in my career. And so back to trying to realize that things weren't going to change at SeaWorld. So had two choices. I could either end my life. I was so depressed and I was getting suicidal. And there was a day that I drove home, and it was a beautiful day, blue sky, sunny. I remember this so vividly. I drove home And I was living in a new place at this time. I was now like with some Christian woman and they were like so nice. And I was just kind of so like, I just don't care anymore. My life is just not working out. And I've tried for so long for it to work out. And it's just not anymore. And I'm not happy at my job and I can't change career. So I think the only thing to do from here is to end it. And so I started to think about like, what are all the ways that I could end it that are the least painful? And I just like made that decision that day that like, yep, like that's what I'm going to do. And it's just like a really like emotionally unevolved day. Like I just kind of like was disassociated with my feelings and my emotions. And it was just wild. And I just remember like making that decision, like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. And then remember that night, I was down on my hands and knees praying and crying in tears. I did not believe in God this time, but I was just praying like, hey, if there's a God, can you help me now? And what I prayed for was hope to have hope. I prayed for one day, can I be happy again? And for one day, can you give me just a little bit of hope to have hope? Do you hear what I'm saying? I didn't have any hope. I wanted hope, but I didn't think I could ever have hope. So I wanted the hope to have hope, be happy. Like that is wild. And so that's what I prayed. And then the next morning, from then on, I don't know what switched, but I remember that prayer so vividly. And I know that God was listening and he was answering because I started to have hope to have hope. And I then realized that I had two choices and I could either end my life or if I wasn't noticing a change being able to be made at SeaWorld, I could change my life. I could take myself out of the problem. So just pause here for a second. So many people are in these problems and I'm like, why aren't you just removing yourself? Obviously, it's not working. You don't have the power to change it. You need to stop trying to control it. Just remove yourself. And so realize that I could remove myself and I could actually step into my fear of the unknown and remove myself from SeaWorld and remove myself from the problems, remove myself from the environment and remove myself from the people who were like-minded and were in this spiral just like I was. And so I decided that next couple of weeks, I was like, what if I make a change in my life? What if I take control back? And I also realized that the last piece that I had control over, because I had control over nothing at this point. I hated my job. I didn't have friends. I didn't have a boyfriend anymore. I didn't have the money to do anything or the gas to go anywhere. I don't know how I had money for groceries. I don't. I realized that the one thing that I do have control over is my job. The thing that's giving me the income that is supporting all of these crumbling pieces in my life. And so I decided to, what if I tried to change my job and actually get a new career? So where did I begin? I begun on my resume. Now, I hadn't built a resume since 10 years ago. At this point, I started working at SeaWorld in 2009 as a sophomore in college. And then I ended SeaWorld in 2019. So I'd worked there for 10 years. So I had no idea how to put my dolphin training skills to a resume that would translate over to any new job. Also, secondly, I didn't know, and this might relate with you, I didn't know what other jobs were out there. I didn't know other jobs. Like my mom was a teacher and my dad was like a mortgage home loans manager. I didn't know what that was or what that meant. And so that I'm like, okay, like what other kind of jobs are out there? And so I had no idea what I was doing. And so here's a few steps of what I did next. And I really think that, and I really hope that these next steps really support or encourage anyone in this. So what I did was I found a successful friend of mine. I found a friend that was successful in the corporate world. And I asked her, hey, can you help me make a resume? And so we created a resume for myself. And I was like, hey, I don't know how to make any bullet points about animal training that relates to a current job. And so she helped me realize that
I actually had a lot to give and a lot to say in my resume. There is so many things that what you're doing right now, no matter what you are doing, that you can translate into tangible, successful, boastful metrics on a resume, anything that you're doing. So for example, she helped me put my experience into creative metrics like customer service. I was talking to people all the time. In fact, I talk to people all around the world in multiple languages. And I was talking to probably, if I wanted to, I could pull the numbers from the website on how many people visit SeaWorld a year, which is in the millions, I'm sure. And so I could have pulled a number like that from a website. It's always great to have numbers on your resume. And so I pulled this customer service skill set of mine. And I talked about how, X years of experience in dealing with challenging situations in a customer service environment. And I also sold programs. I was always, verbally selling these dolphin encounters by just talking to people about it. So I got to also put in sales, like participated in sales of dolphin encounters. And I could have just pulled up any number of how much that one dolphin encounter was, or the SeaWorld brought in just from dolphin encounters alone. So there's always so many numbers I can pull from. I talked about my ability to multitask as a dolphin trainer. We're doing many things at once. We're getting the animal food. We're watching for the surroundings of the pool. We're talking to our other trainers. We're training the dolphin also at the same time. We're making sure it has the right amount of food for that session. We're watching the clock to see what we need to do next and prepping for it and planning for it always. And all of that is always just in one millisecond of thought. And so we talked about my ability to multitask and how successful I was there. We talked about my record keeping skills. We have to record keep for health and records for our animals on their weights. We do medical exams. And so I got to talk about my record keeping skill set there, my data entry skill set. Looking back, I could have talked about my analytical skill set there. We talked about how I had communication skills in a fast-paced environment, how I had strategic thinking skills. As a dolphin trainer, we're always having to strategically think about what we're doing next and what's happening and the why behind it, and working with all types of animals on the hierarchy and what's going on. And also got to help implement one of our multi-million-dollar shows to people from all around the world in all different countries. And I was part of creating that brand and creating that storyline. And so there's so many things that I realized that I can pull from being a dolphin trainer. And so we started to put that into my resume. And there's so many tools online now that you can actually use for that. I mean, we have ChatGPT, we have the AI, we have teal.com. Teal.com is a great one. Just the internet in general. You can just ask for how can I translate this skill set, what I do, to a resume and, make it sound really professional. And so now I had this resume built. And so I think that one thing that I would say for here is also ask for help. Find someone that maybe is most likely out of your inner circle. Because if you're feeling so stuck, we just don't know where to go, you probably also don't have people in your inner circle that are pushing you to do something greater. And if you do, that's awesome. And so ask someone in your inner circle for help there. And if you don't have anyone to go to, that's okay too. I relate with that. You have the internet. And if you don't have a computer, you have there's free public libraries. Okay. And you can always, put documents in an email and save them for later. And emails are free as well. So you literally have no excuses to not go and create a new resume for yourself if you're feeling stuck and trying to change an industry. And so after I had my resume now created for myself, I started to apply to jobs. What I did is you go on Google and you search for jobs, open jobs. Obviously, these days it's so much easier, and there's job boards. There's Indeed.com, there's Glassdoor, there's LinkedIn. So these are all things that I would recommend, and just start applying to jobs. I would just start clicking apply now. I would just start seeing what jobs maybe caught my eye. I would just start sending out my resume. And honestly, that got the ball rolling. The more I started to apply for jobs, the more I would learn about what types of jobs were out there. So I did start to learn as I went. So you don't have to know what you want to do next, but just start applying. And if you get an interview for a job where you're like, whoa, I don't even know what this is, I just clicked apply, just take the interview. You can learn so much just by going to interviews or just applying to jobs that you don't really know what you're doing. It's just such a great start just to get the ball rolling and to even build that own mindset of I'm doing it. That's just going to continue to build this like habit of yours to apply for a job and continue to build the snowball of I can do this and I can start over. And so it's actually kind of fun as you start to search for jobs and you start to find all these new fun jobs. And I didn't even know what titles meant. Like now as a recruiter, I know what so many different job titles mean. But when I even started at my company now, I didn't know what a PPC specialist was. I didn't know what a Google Ads digital media buyer did. I didn't even know what an account executive was. And my next job after SeaWorld was an account executive. So you just figure it out and you start applying to jobs. And so the more you apply, the more you'll learn. And so I think I ended up applying to 100 different jobs. And out of those 100 jobs, I went to at least 25 in-person interviews. This was prior to 2020. So I was driving on my weekends, which were always midweek because I worked at SeaWorld. So I'd be driving to these interviews on the days that I had interviews that I was at work. I would say I had a doctor's appointment or something like that, because my why behind of where I was going and why my why was so strong. I did not want to be at SeaWorld anymore. I was either going to end my life or get a new job, right? Because that's all I had control over. And so I was doing everything outside of my own wheelhouse, like saying I'm sick to go get an interview, which is so unlike me. And so I was just doing everything in my control that I could to change my life and to jump into an industry. I went to so many weird interviews, boring interviews that I could just tell people hated their jobs too. Interviews where managers didn't care about me, just so many crazy interviews. And there was a point where I was like, man, do I just need to like say yes to one of these? And I remember there was one interview that I went to and I was so tired because I was like so depressed, hated my job, wasn't sleeping, was sick, right? All the things I'm still going through in my life. Yet my drive to change my life was so strong at this point where I was so tired of going to all these interviews that I fell asleep with my eyes open. It is possible, apparently, to fall asleep with your eyes open, because that happened to me in this interview and I totally blacked out because I was so tired and I didn't want to be there. And I think they were even going to hire me. I think they offered me a job on the spot. It's a wild. Like, it is actually a lot easier than people talk about to get a job. Not saying it's going to be your perfect job, but if you're like just needing a job, you can go get one. And so I was ready to just like give in and just kind of like hate my life for a year and just like take one of these jobs, knowing that it was going to like do what I was trying to do, get a new job, start somewhere else. It was probably going to open a lot of doors. So it wouldn't have been a bad thing to just say yes. But what's really cool is this is where God's hand was in this. So one of the last interviews that I ever went to was at a company called Organifi. And that's where I worked after this. And so I went into Organifi and it was a group interview and it was called a culture screen. And there's probably, 8 of us or 10 of us in a room. And I just immediately walked into this office, into this building, and immediately felt so, I don't know the word for it, just so like, whoa, there's something different here. And just knew this is where I was supposed to be. And so you would think I would be telling you that I got the job. I did not get the job after that. I made it to the next round of interviews, but I did not get the job after that. And so I went back to my life that I did not like. And I realized that that's the job that I want. And so I went back to SeaWorld and I went back to this life that I did not like for a few months. It was around the end of 2018 that I was interviewing at Organifi, did not get the job, but started to follow up with the hiring manager via email monthly. And I just knew that this is where I wanted to work. This is what I want to do. And I was just fully focused and fully set on this is what I'm going to do next. And I think I'm just a person that like when I know I want something, I go and get it and I don't give up. So I just started emailing the hiring manager month after month. And he just kept saying like, still no jobs open. We'll let you know, Katie. And I just knew like, that's where I'm going to work though. Whenever they're ready, that's where I'm going to work. And that's the same mindset that I had into being a dolphin trainer. And I truly, truly think when you focus your sight on something, you can go and get it if that's in God's will, right? And so around March 2019, I was still just emailing this hiring manager monthly, still no job openings. And I was just done. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so it was my weekend, which was a Tuesday, Wednesday at this point in the beginning of March, which was around my birthday. And I was about to turn 30. So I was 29. And I drove up to my parents' house. I was so nervous. I was about to go tell my parents at the age of 30 that, hey, I'm giving up on my life in San Diego. It's not working out for me anymore, and I need to move in with you guys. Obviously, they said that's fine, but they were also kind of like, hey, what are you doing with your life? And that was not a fun conversation. And I remember it being really scary. There was a lot of tears, didn't sleep that night. And I hadn't been sleeping, which is a whole nother health thing. Hadn't been sleeping for weeks. And I remember that night, I think it was that Tuesday night that I drove there and had that conversation with my parents. I opened my email and I was like, whoa, I just got an email from the hiring manager at Organifi. And he wants to hop on a call tomorrow. And I was like, what? This is wild. And so I emailed him back like, yeah, I can hop on a call tomorrow. No problem. Like 9 a.m. sounds great. And so with no sleep, because of all these things going on in my life, I hop on this call the next morning, acting as if everything is fine. And he offers me a job. He offers me the job at Organifi. And I remember being so excited. Like this is about to change my life, but I had to act so chill, as if like I remember even being, how much does it pay? What are the hours? And I was like trying to be so professional to act not excited. Don't do that, you guys. They want to see that you're excited. I told him like, yes, I accept and I'll take the job. And I was so excited. And I ran upstairs and I told my mom, and we both fell on our knees and cried. And my mom was like, let's pray. And we just started praising God, because I drove up to tell my parents I'm moving in with them, that I'm quitting SeaWorld, and it was my weekend, right? And so I said that I'm going to go back on Thursday, which was going to be my Monday. I was going to go back on Thursday to start my work week and turn in my 2 weeks at SeaWorld, go to HR and turn in my 2 weeks and quit. And then I was going to be done with SeaWorld at the end of March. And I still drove back. And I still went to work on Thursday. And I still went to HR and put in my 2 weeks. But guess what, you guys? I didn't put in my 2 weeks to end my job at SeaWorld and move in with my parents and give up on life. I put in my 2 weeks to end my job at SeaWorld and start a new job at Organifi and stay in San Diego and not give up. Right? Whoa! God is good. And so I started this new job as an account executive at the bottom with all of these other college graduates in their early 20s. And I just hit 30 and I just swallow a lot of pride, a lot of ego, a lot of humble pie. And I had no idea how to do sales. I was now on the sales team. I was now making sales calls and making commission, and my name was on the board, and you have to get to a certain amount to like keep your job, and your sales numbers have to be up. And so I'm learning sales, I'm learning customer service in this as well. And I just make this commitment to myself that like, Katie, we're starting in a new career. We're going to have to start at the bottom again. You can't just start at the senior level that you left at the last time, where you like had interns that worked under you and had people do the dirty work. And no, you have to start from the bottom again. And I knew, I'm like, okay, Katie, like we're doing it. This is part of your why, is to like change your life. And so like, you're going to have to start at the bottom. And so I started at the bottom and I just embraced it. I learned so much. I developed so many friendships and I matured in myself. I gained a lot of wisdom and created this growth mindset for myself. And I really started to switch from this victim mindset that I was living in to this victor mindset, all because this is incredible company that was just involved so much and kind of founded on this basis of personal development and growth. And so I so credit that move to God, but all of that was from doing the work and putting in and getting a new resume and applying myself to all these jobs and going to all the interviews and following up with the hiring managers and humbling myself to start at the bottom again and just not giving up. And I just had this spirit to keep going. And so at Organifi, I just embraced it. I learned a lot. I developed so many friendships, and that job changed my life. And I just had this 180 in that job. And I also took my maturity that I did have, the little that I did have at this time, and I took that wisdom and I applied it where all of my breaks and my lunches at my little account executive job, I would go spend it at every other single department because I didn't know what I really wanted to do still, right? I don't know. And so I'm going and sitting on with the finance team, the marketing team, the HR team, I sat in on every single team, got to know people to figure out, does this light me up? Is this something that I want to do? Do I want to learn more? Do I not like this? And anytime anyone needed help in a project, I would say yes. Or I would even say, hey, do you need support with that? Let me help you. And because I was doing so well on sales and my name was top on the board because I had this drive and this work ethic to continue to want to make this change in my life, I was given the okay to, yeah, Katey, like you can have, 5 hours with this team, 10 hours with this team, as long as you get your work done here. And so my company just saw my work ethic. They saw my hustle. They saw that I was networking. And I just started to get involved in all these little side projects. And then I remember one day I was in a little huddle in a little circle with my account executive team, and the HR team came over. They asked me, hey, does anyone here want to help with the onboarding project that we have? And I shot up my hand because I was in this just, hey, I'm saying yes to everything. I don't know what I want to do with my life. Here I am swallowing humble pie, eating humble pie for all 3 meals of the day, right? I just quit being a SeaWorld Dolphin Trainer. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, but I'm starting over, happier. My mindset's changing. I'm saying yes to every opportunity that can come my way. And I shot in my hand. I was like, I don't know what onboarding is, but yeah, I want to do this. And so I go to this meeting and they're like, hey, Katey, why do you want to be an onboard? Why do you want to help with the onboarding? I don't know. Can you tell me a little bit about what onboarding is? And I just started to help out with the HR team more. And from then, upon approval, I just got this little part-time internship where I would only have to work 20 hours on the sales team and then 20 hours with onboarding. And then I got to learn a little bit about recruiting and got to see people doing interviews. And it's funny because when I was at SeaWorld, I always wanted to do interviews. I was like, I'd love to help out with the interviewing team. That sounds like so much fun. And so I got to do that, and I realized that I love interviewing. I love meeting new people. I love meeting new people specifically that had a passion for impact, because that was the types of people applying for our company. They wanted to leave their boring jobs and make a bigger impact in the world. And I loved that because I was like, whoa, it's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make a bigger impact in my life and trying to change my life too. And I was like, wow, I love this. And because I was just so driven and so determined, and I was being so resilient, and I was just showing up and saying yes to all these things, the leadership team saw that, and they created a new role for me. They saw a gap in the company, saw that we needed recruiting support, and saw that we were staffed enough on the sales team. And they offered me a full-time recruiting job. So they created this new job for me. And I remember when my boss walked into the room and handed me a piece of paper with this new offer, and for the first time in my life, a salary. I was offered the salary of $55,000 a year, which was almost twice what I was making at SeaWorld. And I remember looking at this paper and I just started crying. I just lost it, because for the first time in my life, I went from being suicidal and stuck and thinking that I couldn't do anything outside of dolphin training, that I hit my ceiling and I couldn't move anywhere. And I was 30 and I was just too old to make a change, bawled, because I just got offered my first salary. I did it. I made the change. I had a success in this mission for myself, and I did it. And I started as Organifi's new recruiter. I built my career there, learned so much, and I grew so much that I then also reached a ceiling there a couple of years later and realized that it was time to go. So I started looking for new jobs in recruiting, in talent acquisition. got offered a couple offers at some, in my opinion, boring agencies, but I knew that I wanted to continue to make a bigger impact with my role. And so I sent out a prayer once again, and in the middle of this job search. And after my prayer, went back on the job search, and the company where I work up now immediately popped up. And they happened to be hiring a talent acquisition specialist at the time. And they raised my salary again. This is a story where I actually get to share how, because of my work ethic, my drive, and my resilience, and my making the choice to not give up, and making the choice to actually want to realize and recognize that I do have control over my career, which is my income that I'm making in my life, which supports the lifestyle that I live, and a lot of that, like the mindset that I live in. I started at SeaWorld. I was making about $3,000 a year, I think, after taxes. And I was so broke, and that obviously led me into all those pit holes of depression and suicidalness. And so I was making $3,000 a year, offered $55,000 at this new job at Organifi. And then now the company where I work at now, when I first started, I was offered $90,000. So I think it was just within 3 years total, I tripled my income from 30 to 90 from learning on the job, from work ethic, from drive, from hustling, from actually working hard and going after something and stepping into my fear and figuring it out and not knowing what I'm doing, but saying yes to the unknown. I 180'd my life, you guys. A year after that, or a year and a half after that, at my current company, I was offered my first 6-figure salary. And so now I just get to be incredibly grateful, and every single day I'm so grateful when I wake up that I have this incredible life that I'm flourishing in, you guys. And I have learned since then leadership skills, strategy skills, consulting skills. I created my own business that's I get to flourish in, and I'm now growing in there. And I now work alongside with the leadership team on making strategic decisions in the company. I now own my own little department in the company and get to direct the moves that I make there. I get to work alongside incredible minds that I'm constantly learning from, and they're constantly wanting to pour into me to help me continue to grow. My personal life, you guys, has changed because of these changes I've made in my life. I live in this home that I love. I live 2 blocks from the beach. I have this dog that I adore, and he adores me. And I have these incredible friends in my life. I am truly internally happy, healthy again. I'm not sick anymore. I'm full of joy. I'm back to my old self. And a lot of this has to do with me making the choice to say, yes, I do have control over not being happy in my job. And I do have control over changing my career, jumping industries, stepping into the unknown. And I can take what I thought a job that you couldn't transfer skills on a resume, and I could take it somewhere else, and I can be successful, and I can climb the career ladder again without anything, without going back to school, without having to know someone. You can literally do anything you set your mind to. And that goes back to this verse. And I'm really trying hard to put all of my growth stories and what I'm doing back to the verse, because this is all has to do with God. And I truly believe that God brought me through this so I could share this story. I truly believe that I went through all of this so I could help other people. So Philippians 4:13 has gotten me through so much of my life. I wore this verse on my graduation cap. I wrote it down. I've prayed this verse over really hard times in my life. And I really believe that this verse is what got me through. And it's the perfect verse for this story. Philippians 4:13. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. All things, not some things, not just some things like, oh, but I can't go switch an industry. I can't figure out what I want to do with my life. I can't find a new job. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't have enough money for this. I don't, it's like, no. It says all things, not some things, all things, ALL, all things, not on our own though, through Christ. And at the time, and I'll share this another time, but I didn't even have this faith. But this is where I truly believe that God was like listening to me and answering those little prayers that I would send out. And he was like, Katie, I got you. And here I am. Remember that prayer about having hope to have hope? I got hope to have hope again. And then I had hope. And then I used that hope to go create this life. And then now I have the faith that I do because of what I've witnessed God do in my life. So to sum up, how you can change industries, and some takeaways on, so some takeaways to sum up on how you can change industries too is one, vamp up that resume. Two, get on those job boards and apply for so many jobs. One little tidbit that I forgot to share in this is the accountability that I had. I had my dad help me create an Excel spreadsheet, and we would say, okay, every day we're going to apply for 2 jobs a day. That's, make sure you take 2 days off. That's 10 jobs a week. That means, 40 jobs a month. And when you can do that, he's like, make it your part-time job. It's going to be a very part-time, unpaid job. You're going to hate it. It's going to suck, but it's going to reap so much reward. What you sow is what you reap. And that's also biblical. And I'm so glad that my dad told me that, because through that accountability, and when we set that number, when we set that metric, I showed up for myself because my why behind what I was doing was so strong. So I applied for jobs. I just kept applying. And then I started to strengthen my interview skills by showing up on these interviews that I didn't even know what jobs I applied for. I had follow-up skills. I learned to follow up with hiring managers via email that I wanted to work with. I learned hustle. I learned drive. I learned determination, and I learned resilience. You guys, you can do anything you set your mind to in Christ. And if you want to change industries, you can. And I highly recommend doing it if it's for something good, if it's for a good reason, because it is so possible and it is so rewarding when you do. And I can truly say that you can do it. Just like how I became a dolphin trainer, circling all the way back to the beginning. It's from doing the work, doing the unpaid internships, applying for the jobs you don't like. I'll share another story of another day of how I worked for the rescue center because I was just trying to get my foot in the door, and I was cleaning up bird lice and tapeworms. So fun. So tune in for our next time story, right? And so do the work and reap the reward. And if you're looking to change industries and don't believe that you can, but you want to 180 your life, you can do it. Just get a little work ethic and go for it. Thanks, you guys. And I hope that I can encourage you and empower you to become alive and live your full God-given potential today. Thanks, you guys.